What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Underground Genius. My name is Kyle S. And today's episode will be the final part of a 3-part series where I discussed several hip-hop groups that haven't released a project. Now, before we get into it, I just want to inform my listeners that the video version of this episode, as well as the previous 2 episodes, will not be coming out just because I've been having some technical difficulties with the cameras. I should be able to get back recording sometime later this month, so be on the lookout for that. My apologies if YouTube was your primary way of listening to this podcast. All right, so to talk about the last 2 episodes, I basically talked about 10 different groups spanning from the late 80s to the late 2000s that haven't released a project. And if you haven't listened to those episodes and you're listening to this one now, I highly recommend that you do go back, because I think it's a pretty interesting listen, but I'm biased, so, you know. But to recap, the groups that I covered were as follows: Child Rebel Soldier, Black Hippie, Native Tongue, Children of the Corn, Center Edge Territory, Crooklyn Dodgers, Murder Inc., Desert Storm, Triangle Offense, and Street Family. Now, like I said, all of those were they were older groups, groups of yesteryear, and most of them were New York-based groups. Whereas on this episode, it's going to be more contemporary. What I mean by that is everything from 2010 and up. All right, so CRS was the last group that I left off with on the last episode. And of course, we know Lupe Fiasco and Kanye West to be from Chicago, two Chicago greats. So we're going to stay in Chicago for a moment. So number 11 on the list of groups that haven't released a project is Save Money. So this story starts back in 2009 when a rap punk group called Kids These Days was formed, chief among the ranks being Nico Segal, aka Donnie Trumpet, Greg Landfair, and Vic Mensa. These 3 individuals will go on to be important figures to Chicago's rap scene. The group had several festival performances such as South by Southwest and Lollapalooza, and they even performed on the Conan O'Brien show, but ultimately disbanded in 2013. Now, when they broke up, Vic Mensa gave an exclusive interview to Double XL when he premiered as a solo act, and he discussed a lot of things as far as the dynamics of the group, but there was one quote that stuck out when asked about how his recording process and how his creative process has changed now that he was a solo artist. He said, quote, "Uncompromised. There was a lot of compromise in what was supposed to be a democratic system. That's a difficult thing to have in a band, but that's the way our band was set up. It's cool to make music that's uncompromised." So around this time in 2013, Save Money started to develop. So in addition to Nico Segal and Vic Mensa, Chance the Rapper, Joey Perp, Kami, Tokyo Sean, Brian Fresco, Dolly Austin, Sterling Hayes, and Caleb James came to form what we now know as Save Money. And they were all Chicago representatives representing the pretty much all of the different sides of Chicago, whether it was the north, south, east, or west. And this was important just because of the fact that Chicago, in terms of hip hop, Chicago was being painted as a city divided. So it was nice to see that there was some unity even amongst these individuals. Save Money quickly became known for their individualism and their distinctive styles even within the group. And they experimented with genre many times. A lot of guitars, a lot of soundscapes, a lot of different textures that weren't necessarily found in the hip-hop genre, things of that nature. And there were different levels of success in the group. 2013 especially, Chance released the critically acclaimed Acid Rap mixtape, and that became a staple in Chicago rap. Vic Mensa was also on the project, and he also released his own positively received internet tape. In the following year, 2014, both Vic and Chance the Rapper obtained highly coveted spots on the XXL freshman list, which kind of like cemented their status as Chicago's newest and brightest stars. Now, what was going on with the group, even though they appeared alongside each other in music videos and they've collaborated with each other frequently, it felt like each artist was focused on their own respective catalog, and the group lacked an anchor, so to speak. Vic and Chance the Rapper were frontmen, but I feel like they were frontmen purely for optics and just because of the fact that they were the most popular in the group at that time. The thing is, Chance and Vic never really established themselves as leaders of the group, and it never seemed like they prioritized the group's mission, whatever it may have been, over what their own individual missions were. And they may not have necessarily wanted to take on that role. Thankfully, this is a story that doesn't really end in tragedy or anything of the like. There's no beef between any of these rappers. In 2019, the group reunited to celebrate Kami's birthday during a performance in Chicago. As far as the legacy of Save Money, one can say, like, on one hand, I kind of want to say that they were a little bit ahead of their time. And the reason why I say that is currently now there's a market for these rap bands, so to speak, or these genre blending collaborative efforts. You look at SOB, RBE, you look at Brockhampton, et cetera, and they're kind of like the representatives of the rebellious kids raised in the internet age who don't wish to look or sound like their contemporaries. Whereas I don't know how many of those spots, or I don't even know how possible that would have been a couple of years ago. But then on the other hand, I look at Pro Era, I look at Gym Class Heroes, and then I do believe that it is possible to be successful in that space. Save Money can be viewed as the perfect introduction to the microcosm that is Chicago rap, a unique talent pool where several different artistic styles reflect the values and the diversity of the city, the good, the bad, and the not so pretty. That rhymed. I did not think that was gonna rhyme. All right, moving on. So that's pretty much Save Money. But we're going to stay in Chicago for another minute. So number 12 is Ghetto Sage. They officially formed in late 2019, and they were comprised of Midwest rappers Saba, Smino, and No Name. And it's important to note that Saba and No Name are Chicago natives, while Smino was actually born in St. Louis, but later moved to the Windy City in 2010 for college. So we actually went back and forth between Chicago and the Lou, ultimately settling in the former. According to the Chicago Tribune, Smino said Chance was dropping acid rap and Classic Studios was in this big new building. I was like, this is exactly what I thought Chicago was going to do. I had to stay. So as far as how the artists got their start, or some of their beginnings, Smino performed at Greg Landfair's Jam Night at the Tonic Room, a local Chicago event, and No Name was co-signed by Chance the Rapper. This is kind of like the old regime making way for the new. And remember, Greg Landfair and Chance the Rapper were both mentioned in the last segment. Now, the trio, Ghetto Sage, they first appeared on No Name's debut project in July of 2016, Telephone, on the song Shadow Man. Of course, this was just three rappers on the same song. They didn't necessarily form the group as of yet. 2 years after that, in September of 2018, they appeared once again on the No Name project, Room 25, on the song Ace. So Ghetto Sage represents the new Chicago vanguard of rap, continuing the trends of rappers like Common, Rhymefest, Kanye West, Lupe Fiasco, the list goes on. What's interesting about all three of these rappers is that they've all released projects that have solidified them as the city's mainstays and have garnered critical acclaim for their aforementioned bodies of work. Saba's Care For Me in 2018, or No Name's Room 25 in the same year, and Smino's Black Swan in 2017. They were all very positively received albums. In January of 2019, the trio performed Ace on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, and there was obvious sonic chemistry amongst the group. Smino was interviewed by Billboard 2 months later, and he hinted at the group's formation. When asked about the group's formation or potential formation, he said it, quote, "feels like it would benefit us to do that shit at the right time. We working on it though. Every time we're around each other, we be talking about this shit like, what we gonna call this shit? Well, we could send each other every time we make a song. Saba and No Name aren't on Noir, and I don't think No Name's on Saba's album, but they still show each other the same love. We're camping away. These are really my friends. He continued by saying, quote, they're the first people that have ever popped up on me in Chicago. No Name, Saba, and Mick Jenkins. Mick pulled up and I seen his tall ass, and I look over and I see Saba and No Name standing together. I'm like, if I want to be working with artists, I want to be working with them. Just for them to be at my show on some random shit, I didn't even know they knew who I was. It was the first time I ever sensed some type of community on the rap side. Now fast forward to October of 2019, and the Twitter page for Ghetto Sage was created, cementing the formation of the group. And they announced the first single Häagen-Dazs and released it on October 17th. Aside from that, each artist continued to pursue solo projects. In November, about a month after the single, No Name went on a Twitter rant threatening to quit music. This would be the first, well, not necessarily the first, this is just one of many. Of course, No Name is not one to be shy as far as relaying her personal thoughts and opinions to the public. So I'm not gonna read all of the tweets because honestly that would be a little bit tiresome, but I'll read some very key ones. She wrote, quote, to be honest with you, my heart isn't fully in it anymore. The relationship between artist and fan is really fucking unhealthy. Y'all like what y'all like and hate what y'all hate, and I don't want to be on either side. I'm just trying to read and organize. After Factory Baby, it's deuces, peace sign emoji. I don't know how to read. It's the peace sign emoji. I don't know how that's read. Factory Baby, just to note, Factory Baby was also going to be the album that she was working on. We've yet to see whether or not that'll actually come out. She continued in another tweet, quote, what's funny is most black artists are just as uncomfortable performing for majority white crowds, but would never publicly say that out of fear of an allegiance to the bag, which isn't a bad thing necessarily because niggas gotta eat, but y'all wouldn't be up in arms if I quit working at McDonald's. In another tweet, she says, quote, when I go to work, thousands of white people scream the word nigga at me, and no, I'm not changing my art, so it is what it is. Another tweet read, quote, that's real. Unfortunately, I'm not going to keep performing for predominantly white crowds. I have 2 shows on the books. Then after that, I'm chilling on making music. If y'all don't want to leave the crib, I feel it. I don't want to dance on stage for white people. So that's the last tweet that I'll read from her. And that just kind of pretty much summarizes a thought and belief that has been held for decades upon decades, which is artists are hypersensitive and very perceptive to a lot of things, especially public reception. And I'm not going to criticize or critique No Name for having those opinions. I think they're valid opinions, and of course she's entitled to feel the way she feels. Of course, it is to be seen whether or not the group does continue to release work together. All right, so moving along, there is one last stop we have to make in Chicago, and this group, it would almost be disrespectful to mention the city of Chicago and not mention this group, especially in 2020, just because of the fact that they're responsible for a revolutionary shift in urban music. And that group is none other than GBE, Glory Boys Entertainment. We all know GBE and pretty much all of its members. They've been well documented in the last decade. Their rise, their fall, the tragedies, the triumphs, things of that nature. I believe they even deserve their own episode, but to be honest, this isn't the podcast for that. So, to start, the members of GBE, of course, include Chief Keef, Lil Reese, Fredo Santana, Capo, Trey Savage, Ball Out, Tato, but the list goes on. including others like Gino Marley, SD, Red Chapo, Benji Glow, and so on and so forth. For all intents and purposes of this episode, I will include Lil Durk and Young Chop just because of the fact that they were all closely associated with each other. And Reese, Sosa, Fredo, and Durk were christened the four kings of Chicago drill music, and that's with all respect to King Louie. So GBE, they got their start in the early 2010s, and they kind of ran concurrently with Save Money, and they represented the darker reality of urban Chicago, and just what some of the youths in the city were faced with. It goes without saying that Chief Keef's 2011 song "I Don't Like" featuring Lil Reese catapulted them into stardom. Now, some may attribute some of "I Don't Like's" success to the Good Music remix of the record, but at the same time, the song was becoming a viral hit and would have still seen at least some of the mainstream success, if not all of it, with or without that remix. So immediately after, drill music became a nationally recognized sound, and Chicago rap came to the forefront of music and popular culture. Keef and his cohorts were considered pioneers ushering in a sound. When I say a sound, think Young Chop's production and cadence and hood aesthetic. Now, the music was easily digestible, catchy, and high energy inducing, and it immediately sets the tone in virtually every scenario imaginable. And that was even continued into Keef's later records like Finito and Earned It and things like that. Just how contagious that energy was whenever any of those records came on. This led to acts, in addition to Good Music, acts such as Drake, Rick Ross, Soulja Boy, Jeezy, Joel Santana, flocking to collaborate with these drill artists after the song's success. Other songs such as Love Sosa or Hey Being Sober, Fredo Santana's My Little Niggas, Us by Lil Reese, This Ain't What You Want by Durkio. These songs proved that the drill movement wasn't a flash in the pan moment and was here to stay. And then, of course, came a bidding war, trying to see who can secure the sound and the talent for themselves. Several acts and several labels tried to get out in front and sign rap's next big thing. 50 tried to play a mentorship role to Chief Keef. Young Jeezy, who was also featured on Chief Keef's Understand Me, even tried to sign him to CTE World. So Keef declined all of the aforementioned offers and decided to sign directly to Interscope Records in 2012. Per Hip Hop DX, when speaking about not signing to Jeezy, Keef said, quote, "I can sign people. Why would I sign to Young Jeezy? I'd rather sign to Interscope because Interscope is a bigger brand and they gave me my own label." It was a very astute perspective, especially for somebody who was in their late teens and had little to no experience in the music industry. And this was the official beginning of Glory Boys Entertainment. But more importantly, many Chicago artists leveraged Sosa's success and the national attention to that side of the city. And they also leveraged the power of the internet, which provided the increasing ability to go viral. So more Chicago artists were able to come into the limelight, such as Lil Bibby and Lil Herb, who now goes by G Herbo. Also King Louie, Montana 300, L.A. Capone, rest in peace, and so on and so forth. Led to several creators, chiefly DJ academics, to gain influence as the landscape of hip-hop blogs and the function of media personalities started to evolve along with the music and the technology. And it's also worth noting, or I think it's worth noting, that music videos also went into a very different direction. You know, you have the rappers and their posse set against the backdrop of street visuals, nothing flashy, very entertaining to watch, and it was very low budget. You know, so rappers could make these entertaining videos with little to no effect on their bottom line. And that allowed directors like D Gaines and AZ Productions to gain recognition in the music video circuit, becoming highly sought after by these new and developing talent. Now, as far as a project goes, the closest thing GBE has to an album is For Greater Glory. It That was a mixtape compilation of the signees of GBE that released in May of 2012. It was kind of promoted like a project from the group, like a full-fledged project from the group. I remember being on live mixtapes at that time and seeing that there was like a ticker as far as when that project would come out. And then there was a little bit of hype and buzz around it. So what ultimately happened with GBE? There are a couple of different things. It's not a very simple answer. First, Chief Keef himself had some problematic years. You know, he was on house arrest even when he was still in high school when when the remix came out. And when the I Don't Like video and Love Sosa videos were recorded. In the years that followed, he had several arrests, no shows to music videos, and label appointed appearances. Fast forward to 2014, and Sosa was ultimately let go from Interscope. In addition to that, the allegiances weren't always crystal clear. Dirk always associated with 300 and GBE, but his relationship with Chief Keef wasn't as clearly defined as the other relationships, including Dirk's relationship with Fredo and Reese, or Keef's relationship with Fredo and Reese. So Dirk and Keef, they only had 2 songs together, and they only appeared in the same music video. I believe it was like once. Now there's this great Reddit thread, which I'll put in the show notes, that kind of explains the supposed tension between the 2 rappers over the years. Of course, none of it is I can verify. I do remember a lot of what transpired in that's been included in that Reddit thread. So I definitely think if you want more information or more context, it's worth a read. And then of course Sosa's ability or his action of creating GBE inspired his peers to do the same. Dirk had Only the Family. GBE was also repurposed to Glow Gang ENT. And Fredo Santana, he made his own Savage Squad Records. With so many members and affiliate groups, many needs would have to be addressed that Keith may or may not have been equipped to handle, especially being that young, trying to navigate through an industry as a solo act. And then, of course, these artists still lived a very real life with very real problems. And unfortunately, there were several deaths in the camp, including Trey Savage, Capo, Blood Money, and Fredo Santana. Rest in peace to all of those individuals and the ones that I didn't name. Now, I'll end by saying if a GBE album handled the right way actually did come out, it could have been a defining moment for Chicago music. And there was entirely too much potential that went untapped. Still, the songs that did come out encapsulated a turning point in music and culture and went on to influence the sound of a generation that followed. So for the next group, this next group is a little bit strange. Bear with me. I'll just go right ahead and say it, that it's led by Lupe Fiasco again. So, you never know what to expect. So number 14 is the All City Chess Club. Don't worry if you've never heard of them. I didn't either until doing research on this particular topic. So the All City Chess Club, they pretty much ended as soon as they arrived. And rather than being a traditional group, you can look at them as a collaborative experiment that could be regarded as overambitious than a destructive hip-hop force to be reckoned with. So the group's origins, before I even get down to the members of the group, let's go back to 2007 when the first XXL freshman list was released. So among those in the class was none other than Lupe himself, as he was coming off the success of Food and Liquor Volume 1, which would later help him secure a Grammy, and was prepping the release of The Cool. So 2 classic Lupe Fiasco projects. Of course, the XXL list made a right decision by picking him, in my humble opinion. So the freshman list at that time wasn't a measuring stick for the best and the greatest rappers, the greatest new rappers. It was just a list of individuals to pay attention to. The fans, artists, and labels took heed to this esteemed list, and Lupe was no exception. Now, what was great about the list in its early years, and some can argue even to this day was it attempted to cover the many facets of the genre. And several artists who weren't likely to collaborate with each other found themselves adjacent with their opposites. The 2007 list, for example, could be split down in the middle, separating the pure MCs, quote unquote. So you have Lupe Fiasco, Joel Ortiz, Crooked Eye, Papoose, and Saigon, from their southern counterparts, Plies, Rich Boy, Gorilla Zoe, Boozy Badass, and Young Dro. 10 completely different rappers. Now, the 2007 cover can still be looked at as a one is not like the other picture, if you've ever seen one of those. Despite geographic differences, all of the named rappers shared one thing in common, on the surface at least, which was their connection to the streets. And that was openly illustrated in all of their respective catalogs. Lupe Fiasco, however, was not looked at as a street rapper. He quickly became one of rap's favorite nerds. While this wasn't a theme that was kept in the years to follow on the list, Lupe believed the subsequent list to contain names of individuals who were also looked at differently from their gangster contemporaries. As an acknowledgement to the proverbial box he and his fellow cohorts were placed in, Lupe took to Twitter in 2010 with the following announcement. Quote, "This is All City Chess Club, FYI. Asher Roth, B.O.B., Cool Kids, Charles Hamilton, Blue, Diggy, J. Cole, Wale, and Lupe Fiasco." I don't know. I'm getting a headache just looking at all of those rappers in a group. So out of nowhere, the tweet came with no context whatsoever. And on the surface, it just appeared as just a whole bunch of budding rappers who couldn't necessarily find their place in the evolving genre, who were trying to find their place in the evolving genre. At that time, this was when music was shifting from the traditional rap style hip hop purists love. And it's precisely because of this that Lupe decided to create this group and enlist all of these pariahs, these rap pariahs. Now, I mentioned the XXL list just because of the fact that, for the most part, every one of the artists that were mentioned were on the XXL list. The only exception being the Cool Kids, and my guess is the only year that they would have been eligible for that list, or I feel like they would have easily made that list, was 2008, and that was the year that XXL did not release a list. Diggy Simmons at that point in 2010 was also not on the XXL freshman list, but he would later get a spot. So rather than being a traditional rap group, Lupe envisioned the All City Chess Club to be more like a movement. Again, we're carrying this theme of society of like-minded rappers, just like how we saw with the Native Tongue. In an interview, Lupe called ACCC, quote, "the kids who wouldn't necessarily be the basketball team. They would probably be the chess club if we was in high school." And I was like, yo, we from different cities. We the All City Chess Club. He continued to say, quote, "I just wanted it to be a collective of those dudes and put a name on it. Like, they already kind of put us all in the same box. They kind of put us in the same family of MCs, whether it be the hipster rappers or the nerd rappers. Since they putting us in a box, might as well own the box and write our name on the box and paint it the color we want." So he also mentioned that an All City Chess Club remix of his song "I'm Beaming" was about to come out. It was around halfway done. So a month after that interview, B.O.B. spoke to MTV. He said, quote, "The All City Chess Club is something Lupe had the idea about, and me and Charles Hamilton were at a show, and he came up with the idea and talked to us about it, and we were down." He continued to say, quote, "I feel like the respect level is mutual with all of us, and I've already done songs with Charles Hamilton, Lupe, and Asher Roth. Basically, the whole concept of it is to have a project, a freelance project, as something fun and creative." So in fall of that year, 2010, Backpack fans were blessed with the "I'm Beaming" remix, which featured Lupe, the Cool Kids, Asher Roth, Blue, Charles Hamilton, Diggy Simmons, and Dosage. Though, of course, Wale and J. Cole were missing, the song was an indication that the rappers were standing on the audacious move to form a supergroup. And then to add fuel to that fire, it was revealed that Mickey Fax, who was also another XXL alumnus, was added to the group. And he said something to the effect of, he's added in name, but once he sees that the group is actually really serious about producing music, that's when he will actually go hard with the All City Chess Club. That's it. That's pretty much all I can tell you about the group. They released one song and nothing else after that. Not to my knowledge anyway. So you look at all of these individuals, they were all in the earlier stages of their career, or they were all getting their footing, with the only exception being Lupe. Lupe was pretty established at that time. By that time, when he wanted to do All City Chess Club, he already had his Grammy. He already had two classic albums, and then he was going to release Lasers. He was prepping to release Lasers. So he already did a lot what these other artists, what these younger artists alongside him were trying to do. And once you start seeing that solo success coming back together and being part of that singular unit may be a little bit harder, just because of the fact that you can't really speak to the mind state or the mentality of somebody else in a group. If you're super serious about doing something for yourself and you have to break engagements just for group activities, and some of those members aren't really serious, then that kind of makes you feel a type of way. You look at all of the artists. For example, B.O.B. was breaking into mainstream stardom, and he released Nothing on You with Bruno Mars, and the both of them were out of there after that. Diggy Simmons was trying to still break away from the shadow of his hip-hop lineage. That's something that I've only seen done by Jaden Smith. He's probably the only hip-hop son that's been able to break away from the legacy of his father or mother. You know, you look at Charles Hamilton, who is Charles Hamilton, of course, a firm practitioner of self-sabotage. You know, Asher Roth found success through songs like I Love College, but his subsequent material didn't connect with the masses. You know, J. Cole was doing very well for himself. Wale was doing very well for himself. So, like I said, it's hard to maintain a group dynamic whenever you're trying to, when your primary focus is your solo career. Fast forward to 2017, the Cool Kids did an interview where they kind of gave some insight on why the group never really took off after the I'm Beaming remix. Now, Chuck English, he posed a very interesting argument saying, quote, "There's just really nowhere to go with the rap supergroup. It's kind of why you haven't heard it. The only one that I think everyone will want, and all of them dudes said it ain't never happening, and as I'm starting to figure out why they said it and it's genius, is Black Hippie. Them saying they're not going to do a record so you don't have this anticipation towards them doing this record." He continued with another really good point, citing that an individual's work ethic as a potential factor in the stagnation of any group. He said, quote, "They probably all got different speeds of recording. I've seen it sometimes. They record differently. Y'all might meet up at a party and everything might be smooth. You might smoke weed with this artist and everybody be cool as fuck outside the studio. But once y'all get in the studio, there's so many different behaviors." I'll end this by saying it's perhaps appropriate to say that it's in Lupe Fiasco's ethos to grab some of rap's biggest stars to create art, and that's admirable in itself. His work ethic is to be commended, even though both groups, and by both groups I mean CRS and All City Chess Club, were unable to release full bodies of work. Lou was still able to get them to collaborate in some capacity, and that is impressive in itself. All right, so we're done with the city of Chicago. We are done with the All City Chess Club. I'm praying that we're done with unique, let's say unique groups, super groups like that. So now we're escaping the flames of obscurity. And what I mean by that is all of these next groups should more or less be well known and should be remembered. So number 15 is going to be the Remy Boys. Shout out to Jersey. So they were formed in 2013 in Paterson, New Jersey, and the members consisted of Fetty Wap, Monty, and P. Dice. So, of course, the Remy Boys, Fetty Wap specifically, is an interesting case of an immensely popular artist who went on an incredible run, followed by one of rap's sharpest declines. And I'll get into that in a second. So even though the group was formed in 2013, it wasn't until April of 2014 that the group saw success. Well, Fetty saw success with Trap Queen, viral hit record for Fetty, as well as I would say that that's a W for the Remy Boys. And he put on the burners after that. Of course, the Trap Queen got 2 Grammy nominations in 2016. And in addition to that, he released several singles in the summer of 2015, starting with 679, which was released in June. And I actually found this out recently. 679, the song title 679 refers to Fetty's birthday of June 7th, 1991. I guess the 9 being for the year. After that, 2 weeks after he released 679, My Way came out and was remixed by Drake shortly after that. And the single Again was released in August. I present these singles just to kind of like contextualize this run. And what I mean is, Fetty Wap broke one of those Billboard records that, always gets shouted out, but actually means nothing. It's impressive, so to speak, but at the same time, it's like, I don't really know what this means. So the record that he broke was the first artist to have his first 4 singles chart concurrently in the top 10 of the Hot Rap Songs chart. So as of 2020, the songs Again and My Way are 3 times platinum, 679 is 6 times platinum, and Trap Queen is a diamond single. So like I said, very, very, very successful run that he went on with his first 4 singles. So back to the group. 679, the song 679 served as the formal introduction to the Remy Boys. Monty had the best verse on it. Argue with somebody else, don't argue with me. P. Dice, he ultimately closed out the record. He had the 3rd verse. If you remember the music video, or if you remember listening to the record, he had the 3rd verse on it. Keep this in mind. So the first half of 2015 was scorching for the Remy Zoo, but the latter half wasn't really so hot. And what I mean is, Fetty's debut album came out in September. Now, before it released, the track list surfaced, and the song 679 omitted the P. Dice verse. There was also another song on there called How We Do Things, which had a Dice verse on it. That was also left out. All of Monty's verses are kept, and Monty appears on 7 of the album's 17 songs. 9 if you count the deluxe. Question is, where the hell is Dice? So it was announced around that time that P. Dice was no longer a part of the Remy Boys. And he went to Vlad TV in October of that year to offer his side of the story. And he said he was a member of Remy Boys. He said he was a member of 1738 since day one, and that he was kicked out due to the Tax G incident. So as I understand it, there is a New Jersey rapper going by the name of Tax G who accused Fetty of jacking his style, to which Dice responded in a video dismissing these claims, calling him a hating ass nigga, among other things. Dice says that verbal conflict between the two ensued, prompting Tax G's camp to make a phone call telling Fetty, like, yo, it's either Dice or it's all y'all. So according to Dice, Fetty obliged to avoid beef, and a Remy Boy affiliate, Knit the Grit, informed Dice to, yo, just do your own thing. He admitted to prior altercations with the group. One of the things was Knit the Grit didn't like how Dice was moving, in a sense that he was Remy Boys, but he was also trying to establish his own movement. You know, P. Dice was surprised at this treatment, given that he took on what he considered to be a mentor role. He alleged that he mentored both Fetty Wap and Monty, and they emulated his style. The following day, Fetty responded saying that he kicked Dice out more than once, and he remembered him trying to do his own thing. So he started by saying that Remy Boys got an LLC in 2014 and Fetty and Monty were the CEOs. Pete Dice was the CEO of his own company and RGF Productions, which is affiliated with Remy Boys, and that was co-operated by Knit the Grit. Fetty didn't believe that it was fair for Dice to be CEO of two companies, especially since he was trying to make his own wave. And he acknowledged Dice's presence in the beginning, saying the 3 stars that Fetty has tatted on his forehead represent the group. But he claims that Dice wasn't there for the smaller shows and the videos, and he mainly came out when they were super big performances. Now, as far as the version of 679 that appeared on the album, Fetty said that Dice wasn't even on the original version. That song was made on his birthday, and Fetty was trying to contact Dice, but he never picked up his phone call. So then after that, a week later, Fetty went to California, and Dice remixed the song all on his own. And of course, there were discrepancies over payments for shows, over payments for walkthroughs, things like that. Some other things happened, mainly street shit, lawsuits, things I don't really have the agency to speak on, nor do I care to speak on. Of course, it's all public record. You're able to look this up. But for the purpose of this podcast episode, it's not necessary. It's not really pertinent information. But that's pretty much how the Remy Boys ended. And then, of course, I don't know whether or not this was related, but afterwards, Fetty wasn't seeing the same success with his music. And I don't want to attribute that to the dissolution or I guess the partial breakup of the Remy Boys, but there is something there. All right, so for this next group, number 16 on the list, we're actually going to take a trip down to the great city of Atlanta. 1017 went by several different names over the years, but for now, let's just refer to it as 1017. So they're the only group on this list with an actual album out on streaming services, multiple albums even, technically, and I'll get into that in a minute. So I'll preface this by saying that Gucci Mane he's had one of the most effective rebrand periods in hip-hop history. And with this, he also attempted to rebrand and repurpose his record labels multiple times over the last decade. So we'll start at 2007, where Mr. Davis, he launched So Icy Entertainment, named after his breakout record with Young Jeezy. And in that same year, he signed to Mizay Entertainment, which was an Atlanta-based creative hub spearheaded by Miss Deborah Anthony, who is Waka Flocka Flame's mother. 3 years later, he decided to close up shop and part ways with Mizay. And in those 3 years, he had some key moments, the success of Freaky Girl, Wasted, and Lemonade, among other records. Rappers closely associated with Guwap also saw success. You have Waka Flocka's Oh Let's Do It, Hard in the Paint, No Hands, and Grove Street Party, and you have OJ the Juice Man's Make the Trap Say Hey. Some very memorable Atlanta records for sure. So while dissolving So Icy Entertainment, Gucci launched Brick Squad 1017, and his inaugural roster included OJ the Juice Man and Flocka. Along the way, other members included Frenchie, Pee Wee Longway, and Woo the Kid. Chief Keef, Young Thug, and Young Scooter were also linked to the label at points in their career. Now, if you remember, the early 2010s saw Gucci in and out of jail, multiple jail stints even. Waka took it upon himself to keep the brand intact, and he created Brick Squad Monopoly, an offshoot of Gucci's imprint. Signees to BSM included Slim Duncan, rest in peace, Frenchie, Haitian Fresh, YG Hootie, not to be confused with YG, Joe Moses, and others. BSM also sparked the genesis of 808 Mafia, a team of producers and songwriters with whom Flocka frequently collaborated. The group included Tarantino, TM88, Southside, and Lex Luger. Some of rap's biggest names including Future, Jay-Z, Kanye, Drake, Chief Keef, Wiz Khalifa, Jeezy, 2 Chainz, Uzi Vert, the list goes on, has collaborated with 808 Mafia in some capacity. Now for 1017, for for the Brick Squad Mafia, it wasn't always smooth sailing. Outside of Guwap's incarcerations, Slim Duncan was unfortunately murdered in 2011 outside of a studio. And in 2013, Flocka unfortunately lost his younger brother, K.O. Red, who was also a BSM signee. So 2013, let's stay there for a second. A very important year in the timeline. In March of 2013, Gucci tweeted, Waka Flocka Flames officially dropped off Brick Squad 1017. Big Guwap say, give me an offer for this disloyal little nigga. And then he attempted to clean it up and say that his Twitter was hacked. Flockavelli did confirm that there was tension between the two and that his problems with Gucci were in fact very real. You know, a couple months after this tweet, this is when Gucci had this infamous Twitter meltdown, which he later attributed to the mixture of codeine, promethazine, and poor judgment. Now, aside from that, even after that tweet, Gucci did go on interviews, and he was asked if Waka would appear on future Brick Squad 1017 projects, to which the Atlanta rapper responded, quote, he'll definitely be on the album just because we recorded so much material to date. He went on to say that despite whatever differences they may have, he wouldn't get in the way of Waka honoring contractual obligations and releasing the remaining 3 albums he had left, which was good. Ultimately, that's honorable business. Instead of shelving him and saying you can't release and you can't sign anywhere else and you can't release anywhere else, he was of the belief that, you know, if he wanted to fulfill his contract and put out more music, Gucci wasn't going to stand in the way of that. Now, 2013 ended with Gucci's arrest for carrying a firearm as a felon, among other things, and that forced him to take a seat for almost 3 years. That didn't stop several Brick Squad 1017 and BSM projects to be released. Now, the 2 that exist on streaming services today were both released in 2015, one of which is Brick Squad is the Army, Better Yet the Navy, the second one being Brick Squad Mafia Volume 3. Now, the thing that I found interesting is both of these are found under Gucci's artist profile on streaming services and not on a separate Brick Squad profile. Now, fast forward to 2016, that's when Gucci got released from prison. You know, you got new Gucci, skinny Gucci, soon-to-be married Gucci, sober Gucci. Everybody believed that was a clone. That couldn't be the real Gucci. The rebrand was very, very effective, and it was doing exactly what he wanted it to do. So along with his persona transformation, the 1017 boss decided his label needed a change as well. Enter 1017 Eskimo Records. Among their ranks included Rollo, Asian Doll, who was Gucci's first female artist, Lil Wop, Young Maul, Lil Quill, Hood Rich, Pablo Juan, and Z Money. And there were several releases from the artist, but there was no capstone project to fully cement the label and fully cement the label rebrand. And everything seemed like business as usual for 1017 Eskimo until early 2020 when Asian Doll took to Twitter to reveal that she asked to be released from the label. She asked Gucci Mane to be released from the label. Now, fast forward to June, you get a flash of the old Guwap. He took to Twitter and said, quote, leaving Atlantic Records July 3rd, these crackers polite racists. Months later, he apologized and he announced a partnership with Atlantic Records for his latest venture, the new 1017. And that was commemorated by Gucci Mane Presents So Icy Summer. 1017, the new 1017, is made up of Pooh Shiesty, Big Scar, Fujiano, Keisha Day, and Enchanting, who make up the So Icy Girls. And if I'm not mistaken, Gucci was also looking for new signees. So, all of Brick Squad's albums are found under Gucci Mane's discography, as opposed to having a group discography, like having a separate group catalog on streaming services. And there are a couple of reasons that I can think of. You know, people are more likely to find a group's music under the leader's name. You know, you think of Joel Santana and Skull Gang, people are more likely to search Joel Santana rather than Skull Gang, but then see under Joel Santana, if they see that extension of his music and his brand, they're more likely to click that. And also, it might be easier, contractually speaking, to release a project under Gucci Mane, as he had the most leverage with the labels, and the label resources could be allocated to the group and respective project if it's counted as a Gucci record. Label support goes beyond finding producers and the talent and providing artists with cash advances. You think of marketing, you think of radio play, booking interviews on major media platforms, priority editorial coverage on popular publications. All of this just because you have affiliations with the label. This would probably allow Gucci to handle all back-end payments directly to artists. But then at the same time, this is just conjecture. This is just me just spitballing. I don't really have any confirmation. But these are some of the reasons as to why this may be the case. And like I said, the 1017 brand was one that was repurposed several different times over the years for several reasons. And even though they've all made music together as opposed to albums, traditional albums, I guess the group is more remembered for their mixtapes. And that may be something that core fans may ultimately always go back to. All right, we'll stay in Atlanta for another minute for the number 17 group on this list. So the number 17 group is Free Bands, founded in 2011 by head honcho Future. So per the Free Bands website, I recently went on there and this is what it said. Quote, Free Bands is an international full-service entertainment company founded by Grammy Award-winning multi-platinum recording artist Future in 2011. As a recording label and full-service organization, the company supports a diverse roster of talent via label services, artist management, music publishing, production, touring, strategic brand development, merchandising, and more. So their current roster includes Future, Arion Young, Test, Lil Wookie, Doughboy, Guap Tarantino, Supernova, and Lil Freaky. I'm dead serious. His name is Lil Freaky. Lil Wookie and Guap Tarantino have a record that was released this year under Free Bands. Supernova's debut FBG song was released in December of 2019. And DJ Esco is noticeably missing from that roster list. But if I'm not mistaken, he is also signed in some capacity or associated with FBG. Now, the current iteration of FBG is relatively new and much different from the roster from earlier last decade. So in January of 2015, the mixtape Future Presents FBG, the movie, was released. Now that tape credited Young Scooter, Slice 9, Mexico Ran, Millionaire Mark, Maceo, Test, Doughboy, and Casino as signees. Casino is Future's brother and CEO of Free Bands. Zoe Dollars has also been affiliated with the label. Now, in addition to DJ Esco, Young Scooter is also somebody that has gone noticeably missing. Now, to my knowledge, Scooter's last collaboration with Future was on Beast Mode 2, which came out in 2018. I could be misinformed, but this is what I came up with. Now, in 2019, the group released FBG Independence Day, Unreleased Heat. There was no Future on that project. What I'm thinking was it was an attempt to revitalize the brand and let the group stand out, as opposed to just letting the single star overshadow everyone else. Now, of course, it's an interesting group of individuals for sure, and I'm not sure what a collaborative project would sound like, but with an artist as big as Future and as talented as Future, curating the production, curating the sound for it seems like a dope idea, so that is yet to be seen. Moving on, well, staying in Atlanta, but moving on to the next group. I actually do groups 18 and 19 together, just because there's so many similarities between the two. So groups 18 and 19 are Private Club, led by Made in Tokyo, and the Sailing Team, which was led by Lil Yachty. Now I'll start with the Private Club first. So in addition to Made in Tokyo, 24 Hours, aka Royce Rizzy, Salma Slims, My Name Finn, Noah Woods, Down to Earth, and Rossi Rock all make up the group. Now, if we rewind a little bit, 24 Hours was signed to Lil Scrappy's label early last decade. Then he signed to Jermaine Dupri's So So Def label. That's when he changed his names from Royce Rizzy to 24 Hours. So Private Club started in 2014 and was created by Made in Tokyo and 24 Hours, who were brothers originally from Atlanta. So their visibility immensely increased after Made in Tokyo's hit record Uber Everywhere. Now, what Private Club did was they curated a lot of show experiences, and their focus was largely on the visual side of artistry in addition to the music. So in December of 2017, they released I Love the Private Club Volume 1, which was their first mixtape. And you would still be able to find it on mixtape websites. Now moving on to Sailing Team. So Sailing Team is comprised of Lil Yachty, K Supreme, Aaron Versetti, Burberry Perry, who went on to become The Good Perry, Big Brother Chubba, Earl the Pearl, Soup, BU, J Bands, and of course Cody Shane. So they started to make their buzz, they started to make their noise right after Lil Boat's 2016 single One Night, which was produced by The Good Perry. And in September of that same year, the mixtape Lil Yachty Presents Sailing Team was released, and it's still be able to be found on mixtape websites. Now, as far as the similarities between the groups, both of those groups are part of the 6 groups on this entire list of the 20 groups that I've named, or that I will name, with a female member. So shout out to the both of them. Both have an easily identifiable leader figure with viral hits who gained recognition in the same year, being 2016. Now here's where it gets a little bit surgical. Both Yachty and Tokyo entered with groups while they were trying to establish themselves as solo artists. Now this can be really tricky, especially when shit doesn't pan out the way you plan out. So Yachty released Teenage Emotions in mid-2017, which debuted at number 5, but only sold about 46,000 records. You know, and of course there were a lot of eyes on him specifically just because of his brand of music. There was a lot of anticipation. A lot of his fans were eager to listen to his music. And needless to say, he fell short, probably very short of his expectations, maybe even his own. And he became the butt of everyone's jokes. So imagine being in his position after the success of one of your singles, and as you're starting to develop your career and you're helping your peers develop, and your debut project, which everybody is expecting to be this great thing. Some people, of course, are expecting for it to not be so great. Imagine when that project comes out and all of a sudden it's not as well received as you would have hoped it to be. And then imagine if a group still comes to you like, yo, listen, yeah, I know you just did that with your project, but we still have work to do. Me personally, I would have been baffled, befuddled, and bewildered about my solo career. And at that point, if somebody in my quote unquote group would have come up to me asking me about, yo, what about me? I'd be like, yo, fuck out my face. That's just me though. That's probably not what happened, but Yachty did tell Interview Magazine that he was devastated and so confused following the poor reception to his major label debut. Now you couple that with the scenario Yachty gave years after in a Kerwin Frost interview. Now imagine working tirelessly to establish a brand with the intentions of spreading that visibility that you have, that popularity, and the opportunities that you're getting with your team, only to come to a point where they may not want it for themselves as much as you want it for them, or you want it for yourself. He said, quote, but it got to a point where I was spending so much money, almost $1 million, trying to create this company out of my own money, and they didn't want it for themselves. I was getting these big magazine cover shoots, cover looks, and I'm taking them on tour around the world twice. I'm getting these hotels and big tour buses and spending all this money on custom uniforms and video shoots for these niggas not to give a fuck. End quote. Cody Shane, she kind of doubled down on this same sentiment on a TRL interview with Sway, saying, quote, everybody didn't really take that platform he gave us to really capitalize off of it. Now, when speaking on the group, Yachty, he continued by saying, quote, they were just really lazy. Not even a thing where they were envious or jelly. They were just really lazy. I was like, why am I sitting here trying so hard to make you guys? That's the thing. I never wanted money from my friends either. I just wanted them to be great. I never signed any of them. I never put none of them on papers because I didn't want that. I wanted them to get their own labels. End quote. Now, one could look at that as a failure, but there was a little bit of success just because of the fact that Cody Shane was able to take that visibility and make something of it and establish her own brand. So shout out to her. So Yachty says after listening to advice from A$AP Rocky, he decided it was high time to focus on himself. That was pretty much the end of the Sailing team. The Sailing team, they kind of show the dangers of trying to establish yourself as an individual act while working with a group. You know, there are a couple of different models to follow when it comes to these rap posses and what to do as far as navigating through the industry and creating success or pushing success for one member or several members. Now, look at A$AP Mob. The Mob initially let Rocky be the focal point of the group as the other artists slowly started making names for themselves in several different circuits like music and fashion. Or if we go back into the day, into the Wu-Tang Clan, they established themselves as a group first, at least on a mainstream level. And then after that, each individual artist sought out solo deals on different labels for themselves. Or if you take Cameron, the case of Cameron, where he became a well-known solo artist, and then he was able to leverage his visibility to build up Dipset, which of course was something that Yachty and perhaps Made in Tokyo, along with 24 Hours, what they were trying to do with their respective groups. As far as the Private Club is concerned, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't seem like there's any type of like they've broken up. There's no indication currently that I could find anyway that they're still making music together, but their social media accounts are still active and the artists are still on the labels. So it's still possible for a full commercial Private Club project. However, that may not be the aim of the group. All right, so we're at the end of our journey, almost just about. The last group, number 20 on this list. I'm curious to know whether or not you've already guessed the group. So number 20 is none other than October's very own, OVO Sound. And there's a reason why I'm counting them as a group. You'll see in a moment. You'll hear in a moment rather. So OVO Sound officially was founded in 2012 by Drake and Noah Shabib, also going by the name of 40, as well as Oliver El Khatib. OVO Sound is comprised of Drake, Party Next Door, Majid Jordan, Roy Woods, O.B. O'Brien, Division, Plaza, Baka Not Nice, and Popcorn, according to the official OVO site. So we all know the story of Drake and OVO. I'm not here to delineate that. There are some points that I do want to get to. Of course, the main one being the OVO sweatshop, the Drake hit factory, whatever it is that you wanna call it. The public opinion is that Drake uses his signees to write records that he would use for his own project and leave the signees with the scraps. That's basically the running joke or the public reception of that label. Now, I don't necessarily agree nor disagree with that, but if you were to take, like, let's say, for example, let's say if you take Drake's feature on Party Next Door's song Loyal, which was on Party Mobile, the project that came out earlier in 2020. If you take his verse on that, Drake didn't really add any value to that song other than an opportunity to build up anticipation prior to its release, just because of the collaboration itself. You know, Drake and Party Next Door, you know it's gonna be some shit. What he really did was he provided a different texture to Party Next Door's first verse. It was an exact copy of the first verse. There was no new information. There was nothing. Just Drake repeating more or less verbatim Party Next Door's first verse. In my opinion, I don't think it was a necessary feature, and I really wonder about its purpose. But that's neither here nor there. Now, I consider them to be a group and not just a label, just because of how frequently each artist collaborates with each other and how much the brand is embedded in pretty much all of Drake's pursuits. You look at OVO Fest, you look at OVO Sound Radio, you look at those things, and it's obvious that they want to be looked at as a singular unit. Now, it's important to note that one of Drake's aims for OVO Sound was to cultivate talent from Toronto and the rest of Canada, providing them a creative hub and an opportunity to increase visibility inside and outside of their home country. And it's also home to producers including 40, Boy Wonder, and T-Minus. That part, no matter what it is that you think he is doing, that objective is definitely admirable. Like, I respect him for that, just because of the fact that he wanted to give these outsiders to what was more or less an American-dominated genre, these outsiders from where he's from, an opportunity to allow their voice to be heard. Now, as far as the label catalog, Drake, he doesn't necessarily, even though he is the leader and OVO is synonymous with Drake, like it's one and one, he doesn't really feature a lot on too many of the members' album. You know, he's on one Majid Jordan album, which was their self-titled debut, one Roy Woods EP. He's on all four of Party Next Door's projects. And he's on I Love McConan's first project, if you want to count that, because yeah, I Love McConan was signed to Drake right after Tuesday came out. So with the exception of Party Next Door, everyone received a Drake feature on their first project with OVO and not much else. And that kind of makes it feel like he offered an obligatory verse, rather than it being like, yo, it makes sense for me to be on this record. It's like, yo, these are the next up on my label. Let me just put my verse right there, and then that's it. Whereas the subsequent releases, they may not have gotten that same Drake verse. However, he does have writing credits on multiple albums, including 2 Division projects, so he isn't completely disjointed from the group. Now, in addition to taking material, quote unquote, taking material from these artists, having them write for him, write songs and things like that, it's also believed that he neglects these other artists when it comes to marketing, artist development, etc., etc. And one of the things that we all noticed is their sonic aesthetic is just nearly identical throughout the entire label. Like, you know, you have Party Next Door who credits himself as being the one to shift the R&B sound, the modern R&B sound. You know, but you get elements of that in Division. You get elements of that in Majid Jordan, and the list goes on. One possibility is that Drake is just simply providing artists an extension of his own platform, and he lets them utilize it in whatever manner that they choose. But then at the same time, there's a very thin line between selective distance and negligence. So it's understandable how the popular view is that Drake is in fact neglecting these artists. You know, from a like take any cat like a casual fan to an avid listener of any of these artists, outside of Drake, we don't really know too much about any of them. And even whenever we do get flashes of them in public, we're left with more questions than answers. You know, think of the lack of interviews that they give, or think of their social media presence. Now, my view is once he gives it exposure, once the bigger artists, and I'm talking about Drake, but I'm just talking in general. Once once the bigger artist gives the rest of their group exposure, it's pretty much incumbent upon the receiving artist to strategize and capitalize off of that increased visibility to an extent. I feel like that artist would need to start to take control or seek information and learn how to take control. You know, just because you get a sudden spark or a bump, that doesn't mean that your success is guaranteed. You look back at what Drake did with the Migos with Versace, and you look back at what Drake did with The Weeknd early in his career, and you can't necessarily think like it's gonna be like that with you if you do get that Drake feature. You know what I'm saying? That quote unquote Drake stimulus package. Finding better ways to use that stimmy package, that's also something that the artist should be directly responsible for. However, at the same time, there's no public evidence that suggests that Drake is pushing these artists to develop themselves. You know, you look at labels like CMG, like Yo Gotti and CMG. You look at Maybach Music, where the artists are left to develop their own fan bases through their own personality and their platform and their persona, etc. You see on Maybach, you see on Double MG that Wale is completely different from an individual like Meek Mill, who's different from an individual like Gunplay, yet they're all able to find that synergy and make it work. And not only they're able to find that synergy, but they're all able to flourish on their label and feed off of their respective members' different fan bases. And of course, under Drake's regime, OVO artists are often looked at as an extension of Drake himself rather than standalone acts, just because of the fact that he is just so big a figure. And as I mentioned before, the music just sounds entirely too similar. Now, as far as a label strategy, Dan Runcie of Trapital, he brought up an interesting point of how the OVO business model may be replicated in the future. And what I mean by that is these artists own labels with several artists but a singular focal point. Now, there is no company strategy, artist led or otherwise, that is one size fits all just because of the dynamics of each artist and their needs, just because of how unique everybody's situation is. You know, you look at No Limit and Master P, his tactics were proven and they're still studied to this day, but implementing that same strategy may not work for OVO. You know, OVO is a specially curated group of artists that all share the same mystique and anonymity that hasn't really helped develop a lasting fan base. P&D being the only exception. You know, he was able to position himself as being one of modern R&B's songwriting savants. And as I said before, that has allowed him to try and take responsibility and take credit for this current sound. Ultimately, Drake and OVO, they've created the subsection of neo R&B with the best offerings going to Drake and P&D. And that overshadows the other artists, in my opinion. Like, the chemistry is there. Whenever they do collaborate, they make good songs, but it doesn't feel like it's one cohesive movement at times. And a lack of public push from the leaders is also an issue. Like, for example, I never heard of Plaza, and I still don't even really, like, I did a little bit of research. I listened to I think one of his records, but I know nothing about Plaza. And it's obvious that Drake and Party are the priorities, and you can see that in the rollouts and media push for whenever they're releasing projects, whereas the other artists are merely afterthoughts. And if there's an opportunity for somebody to say what I'm saying is wrong, I welcome it. I would encourage you to reach out to me and tell me, like, yo, listen, this is actually the situation. And that's all I got for you. That is all I got as far as the 20 hip hop groups that have never released a project. If you listened this far, thank you. I appreciate it. I know this episode is a little bit longer than the previous ones, but I just wanted to finish this and be done with it. And I'm hoping that you got a lot of information out of this. So once again, thank you for listening. If there are any groups that I've missed, I can think of one. It was purposeful, but I can think of one group that I missed. If there's any groups that I've missed, feel free to reach out. No, I wasn't doing duos. I could do duos. I can talk about Kendrick and J. Cole. I can talk about Chance the Rapper and Kanye West. I can talk about Chance the Rapper and Childish Gambino, Lil Wayne and Joel Santana. I could do that, but I maybe save it for later, or I'll probably never get around to it. Who knows? So that's it. And the next episode of Underground Genius, I haven't decided on the topic just yet, but that will be coming to you Sunday. And I promise from here on out, we will be on time every Sunday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern. So thank you for listening. I'm Kyle S., and this is Underground Genius.